do you want to do a call of order and
Yeah, I can do that. April 29th, 2025 workshop agenda, District Master Plan, Magna Water District, 8885 West, 3500 South, Magna, Utah, the General Office Building. So today at our diocese, we have Trevor Andre, Dallas Henline, Steve Clark, myself, Mick Sudbury, Jeff White will be joining us shortly, Danny Stewart, Leal Fitzgerald, and Clint Dilly. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I'd like to welcome public and guests. So review, discuss the District 2025 Update Master Plan.
Thanks, Mick. I would like to welcome Keith and Rachel from Bowen and Collins. They've been working on the master planning effort for us. They've got some preliminary results and decisions that we'd like to share with the board, and welcome any feedback that the board has on high-level stuff, especially, and give direction, make sure we're heading the right direction in accordance with the board's wishes as well. So I'd want to turn the time over to you guys.
Right. So let me just tell you what I hope to get done today. We wanted to talk to you about our updated growth projections and the densities that we're looking at. That's kind of the basis for everything that we do that follows. So I want to make sure that the board feels good about where we're at with that. Based on that, we'll look at supply and demand and the impact of those growth projections on that. And then today we have a few sewer model preliminary results. We don't have the water model. We wanted to get some progress, but we didn't want to get too far until we had this meeting and made sure we had the board's feedback and buy-in. So that's what we're going to try to cover here. We were just looking at this. This is a projection of your population moving forward. So the gray line represents the population estimate for your existing service area. That's this line at the bottom. And then because there are some areas that in the last master plan we looked at as potential annexation, I think since that time they have become a little more firm in annexation, and maybe you can help me understand how firm. But we've added in the population associated with the gateway to Little Valley. That has already been annexed in, as I understand it, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And then also we would have additional Kennecott foothills, and we'll look at what that area that includes. And then also the gateway, the Little Valley itself. And as you can see, in the existing service area, there's not a whole lot of additional growth projected, maybe another 5,000 residents or so. But by the time you add all these other areas, we're almost doubling the potential for growth in the district. Let me look at this just in terms of where that occurs. So these highlighted here properties are all the properties where there are potential for future growth that are not currently built out. So what you can see is there's some little properties throughout your service area that are currently undeveloped that could be developed moving forward, including all these yellow. Over here is shown the density. So the yellow is lower density, 2.5 to 5.6 ERUs per acre. Is this supposed to be the orange, Rachel? Because I think that yellow showing up is actually the 2.
Yeah.
All this yellow.
You can see it better over here.
Oh, okay, there you go. Yeah.
But you have the yellow is the 2 ERCs per acre, and the orange is 2.1 to 5.6 ERCs, and then that redder is the darker.
The darker is the higher density. So to note, this area here is what's considered foothill area, and this area here is what's considered the Little Valley. A good question to ask might be, where did this come from? How do you have your information? We had a chance to sit down with Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District. They had met specifically with the property owners, Kennecott, associated with this property to talk about their future water needs. And so we received this map from Jordan Valley and then kind of translated it into the district's service area. The ERCs and density numbers that we're using come directly from the most recent planning that was provided to Jordan Valley. I will note we were not able to meet directly with Kennecott, but we did get this via Jordan Valley.
So, with Little Valley Gateway, I was with Kennecott last week and a couple weeks before, but this build out of Little Valley is not gonna happen for probably 30+ years.
Right.
Because they're not gonna do any development until, they shut down the mining,
Right.
is what they told me.
And so we currently have it identified starting in about 2050, so 25 years out, and maybe it's more like 30,
Well,
as
I
you
don't have
said.
to worry about that then.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, it puts us in kind of a tough position, right? Because one, it's so far out in the future. Two, it's not in our service area currently. So we are trying to find a balance between highlighting what's potential and what's out there, but also not absorbing a bunch of costs now to plan for that. So there's just really the fortunate thing is that it really only impacts a few key facilities that we could maybe put in a little bit bigger line now, and mainly the sewer, right? I mean, that's the only decision that really making now could potentially save us big time in the future without much additional cost. So I just wanted to point that out.
That's a great point.
It's something that we just got to keep in mind. But it's challenging to do, so.
Is the foothill area, has any of this been annexed into the district yet?
It has not.
Has not, okay. So, and I'll just point out, that's basically this red line here. So they are showing that beginning in 2030, basically as soon as the gateway has been absorbed, start that coming online and building out through, you know, the next 30 to 40 years type of deal.
And that area doesn't have the same limitations, right?
Right.
The power plant and then the slurry line.
Right, you could
Those could
really-
potentially be built without, and those could still, I know that the power plant's shut down though, right? One of the
Yeah, they're
limitations.
getting ready to tear it down right now.
But the slurry line's still there, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, that's why they said they're not gonna do anything till they're done mining, because the slurry line, the liability.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. The one other thing I will point out is none of these projections currently include the proposal for additional density in kind of your north area.
Yeah, you know Daniel Torres's economic redevelopment that he's pitched. We've mentioned it in the master plan, but none of it is included. Just, we basically said, hey, if that were to happen, that would need to be relooked at because it's such a big change.
Right.
We just want to highlight, hey, if the city wants to go that direction, we would need to know more firmly and see some sort of something from the city that gives us more commitment, right? Because it could impact our decisions dramatically
Right.
because it's such a higher density.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Okay, so that's kind of the growth projections. I want to talk about how that impacts your water supply. And so we're going to jump to these figures, which you have seen before. And again, the color's a little washed out. You can see there's a green right there in the middle there. Yeah, and that top color is especially hard to see right there. I want to though just talk to you about what these charts represent. So the lines represent demands, and the areas here, these colored stacked areas, represent your various supplies. So this is looking at raw water production, which is essentially all of your water, and then we're going to break this down into some different components here in just a second. Excuse me, raw is raw water going into your culinary system. So there's a whole bunch of lines that need a little bit of explanation. So let's start with this. This is your historic demand, and there is a break that occurs back here when you installed your treatment plant that looks at the historic raw production and then historic culinary production. So those two deviate once you put in your treatment plant, the waste being basically your byproduct. What we've done from there is, from the historic data, we have projected forward what your demand will look like. And so this solid brown line at the bottom represents what you would see if there was no additional annexation of those other properties. And this is useful only to help you understand kind of the impacts of the potential annexation. So then on top of that is this solid gray line represents what we project your demands to be with the additional annexation. And then on top of that, there's two important lines, which you can see there's a brown and a gray line. This represents what your demands are, plus a reasonable buffer for supply reliability. So one of these supplies could end up failing for some reason. You have a well that goes out of service, one of your treatment train gets affected, those types of things. You want to not be on the very edge of your supply. And so we always need to provide a little bit of buffer. We've worked with your staff to identify what the right level of buffer is, and that's what the dashed lines are. So ultimately, for the current annexation area and the recommended buffer, we want to make sure our supplies are enough to meet this top line, this dashed gray line. So what does that mean? On the raw water side, what we can look at is we can look at this line, and we can see that our existing supplies satisfy to right about here, which is like 2060. So we're actually in great shape from a raw water supply standpoint. But with that annexation, we are going to need some additional water out here. And so we're going to need some future water associated with Kennecott Benches and Little Valley. I'm going to hold off talking about those in detail till we go to the next slide, but does that big picture kind of make sense to everybody? We're feeling good about that? Okay, let's talk about then our culinary. Man, maybe look over here for a second, because these colors are just a little easier to see over here. This is your actual culinary water production. And so we have the exact same lines, but this is just reflecting treated culinary water that you need to use. So again, this is looking really good. Your existing supplies, your water treatment plant, you have water to reach out to about 2060 here. then we end up running out of water. So our recommendation is that you have two options. One is you could allow development just to occur and use up any of your available treatment or culinary water here until you ran out, and then in 2060 you could start requiring people to bring in additional water to meet that demand. One of the challenges of that is that doesn't leave any room for your growth in your existing system. But I will note from 2060 on, I mean, there's not that much growth, probably only a few hundred acre feet planned for your existing system. But I think the second option, which I like a little better, is to basically say, if you're going to annex in, we need you to bring in culinary water in the form of a Jordan Valley contract to bring in additional water so that we have that water moving forward.
And that's probably one of the big decisions that we'd like input from the board on is, do you like that approach? So that when they do come with an annexation request, it just seems like that's a good time to say, hey, yeah, we have water, but we're making sure we can fulfill our existing service area. We don't want to commit that water to you, and then we've got to do something else for the existing customers. It seems like a good time to say, hey, you need to bring water, or you need to pay in. It's almost like ties in with the Jordan Valley budget, water budget, where they're saying, hey, we can provide a certain amount of water, but anything more than that,
You're gonna have to bring in.
you're gonna have to bring in, or.
Right.
So I think it makes sense from our perspective, but wanted to get your guys' feedback.
I think so too.
So I got a question for you. So where is Kennecott getting all their water from Jordan Valley right now?
Kennecott, the mining operations?
Like which side
Do
of
we feed
Basin?
Kennecott with any water here? We don't, do we? Because they
Not
have their own.
Yeah, I think they're using, I mean, they do pump from Magna.
Yeah, right,
That
right.
pump station on
Right.
21st does a lot, right?
So the mining stuff comes from Jordan Valley, right?
So here's my understanding is that for mine operations, Kennecott has primarily its own water rights.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say, because when I was up there, they had tanks and everything right there, right up in the Copperton there.
Yeah. Yeah, so they have groundwater rights, wells, different, from their different tunnels, they're actually collecting water.
But I know that they have probably some coordination and overlap because of the treatment
With Jordan Valley.
that they do, right? I don't know if they swap water rights or water shares.
That's right, I don't know the details.
I'm not sure, but they are tied with them on some.
They already have their own water plant up there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you lead to a really good question, which is Kennecott going to have to buy Jordan Valley water, or will they bring their own water rights?
That's what I was just thinking.
And we actually asked that question multiple times to Jordan Valley, and their answer was this. Kennecott's being really coy about it. And they're saying, why don't you plan on us using your water for now?
Yeah.
And maybe we'll have some of our own water.
They don't want to have you not plan on them,
Yeah,
and then there's a new regulation or
right.
something that
They're
makes their
not
water,
committing then.
then their water can't be used without, yeah, that could be.
So in my mind, in the near future, they're almost definitely going to bring Jordan Valley water because it's already developed, it's treated, it's available.
Yeah.
If they're going to use their own water rights, they got to figure out how do we get it to Magna, how do we get it treated. I mean, there's a lot of complications there.
The other thing to point out, this is in highlight or this is in line with our past master plan, the last one, we made a pretty major determination on how we were gonna expand the secondary. So within this assumption is that we were just gonna hit secondary, it's called priority secondary expansion. But that means we're gonna continue to hit secondary where it makes the most cost sense, the least cost, or it's most efficient with dollars. So all new development, and then this would prioritize the large users.
Yep.
So it was we were trying to get all the schools, all the churches, all the recreational or institutional facilities, and then try to tie in some of the sections where we can put in a pipeline and connect a whole big area. That was the assumption. This continues not to assume secondary throughout the whole district. So we're not, with these assumptions, we're not telling people everybody's gonna get secondary. So just wanna make sure that that's still in line with the board, still feels comfortable with that. Because if we changed that, we could maybe not, we could probably gain some more, push off some of the culinary side by gaining on some of the secondary side. So our culinary demand would go down, our secondary would go up. It might give us some room on that chart, but it would come at such a high expense to tear up all the roads and get services to all these small areas and small lots. We don't think that that's probably still the best use of the money.
Okay.
And we'll look at secondary here
Okay.
shortly, but I appreciate you bringing those points in. The one other thing I will mention about this is this may also have some impacts on your rates. And the reason for that is this new Jordan Valley water, if that's where it ends up coming from, is going to be a much more expensive source than a lot of your existing supplies. And so you'll have a decision to make at that point, which is, do we just put all the costs, spread them out to all the users and everybody's goes up a little bit? Or do we create a new service area of some sort where if you're in the Kennecott foothills or Little Valley, you are paying a higher surcharge associated with that water?
And we do have examples of other communities doing that.
Right.
Draper does that, right?
Yeah,
Draper City.
yeah. Harriman is doing that as well.
Olympic Hills, right? Olympic. Is it
Will
Yeah.
Olympia have that too?
Olympia, what's it called? Olympia?
Olympia Hills?
Olympia Hills?
Yeah, Olympia Hills. Yes.
I think that's a fair way to do it, really. I mean, it's hard to say to the people over here, your rate's gotta go up more because of what they're wanting to do up there, but that's another decision that we can make
Right.
in the future.
Okay,
You
before,
just gotta be here 30 more years.
I was just telling that put me at 95.
I mean, that's why I want to talk to the board, is because this is such a critical decision. As
Two wheels.
when do we transition from, you know, just come, pay your impact fee, we got the water for you, to you are now required to bring your own water, and probably at the same time that creates a new service area.
Yeah, I think that's the best plan. The second one.
Start now?
Oh, no. I think planning and talking about it now is good. I don't think collecting any money or planning from a monetary.
Clint, let him in.
Jeff's here.
Will you?
yeah,
Hi, Jeff.
Hello.
Anywhere
Sit
you
right
want.
there so you can see.
Yeah, well, this one, yeah, you want to be able to see that screen probably. Do you want
You
to
want to get Jeff up to speed? You want me to?
go
chime
ahead
in?
and just summarize that?
So Jeff,
Here, Jeff, come up over here so we can all see you. And now you can slide down or whatever, and that way you're not behind us. Yeah, it don't matter, I guess.
So here, long story short, we've talked a little bit about projected growth, and we've talked about your supply. And the big change from the last master plan is there's quite a bit of additional growth projected for the Little Valley areas and the foothills. Kind of these areas up here. There's additional growth that's been added in there. And when we add that growth in, what happens is this top line is the line that we're trying to plan for. We run out of supply in about 2060, and we need an additional, what is that, Rachel? 1,400 acre feet or something like that to be able to supply our projected demands. So you have two options. One is you could kind of just continue to sell the water that you have for the next several decades and let people annex in as you wish. Or you could start a new policy which would suggest whenever somebody annexes in, they need to start bringing in their own water, which would likely be Jordan Valley water, to be able to start providing additional water. If you did that, that's basically what this yellow is for the foothill area, the gray is for the Little Valley. And so bringing that water in would provide, enough water to satisfy your projected future demands. What's the other option?
Yeah.
Rather than having them,
Well, if they don't have that access, is most of this gonna be Kennecott property that's developed?
yeah.
Okay, so could we, Kennecott has a lot of well rights, could we have them give us some, transfer some well rights so we can drill some wells?
Yeah, if you require Kennecott to bring in their own water, it could come in the form of Jordan Valley water, or it could come in the form of water rights.
Like, water rights are more controllable.
That's true.
I mean, because the price doesn't keep going up on your own well.
Yeah.
But if you buy Jordan Valley, you're gonna see escalation of price.
I will say where where Kennecott has the water, I just don't know all the details to that. Is it here and is it usable, or is it out in South Jordan somewhere where now you gotta figure out how to get the water here?
But we have certain advantages being a municipality, right? I mean, a water company that we can move things around if we have to.
To some extent, I mean, the way that I would propose doing it is just simply say, we need you to bring water for your development, and then, staff could basically review what's our best option here.
And that's what Jordan Valley's doing right now, is if you're gonna, you need to bring shares to us,
Right,
right?
yeah.
As opposed to, we start planning and developing our own sources now, and we just raise fees so that it can repay that. That's the other option, is we make some sort of adjustment to our impact fee and our rates based on them.
That's what I'm hearing from the other cities. The impact fees are horrible because when people are coming in developing, they're charging to get a hold of those resources.
Right.
And it sounds to me like it's a resource we need to plan for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just makes it challenging. One, if we're basing that on an area that's not annexed, it's a potential annexation. It makes it very difficult to plan when do we start charging those? If we say they've got to bring their own water, it helps align us. We don't have to make that decision. We they've got to plan for it. If we're telling them now, they've got to do the planning on how they're gonna bring in water and start talking with us. And we don't have to put that burden on existing, developers or the existing rate holders now. We can defer that till it's needed.
So what would be good on this chart? If you could show us what, if we have to plan on Jordan Valley Water, I'd like to see what we expect Jordan Valley Water's price will be to 2060.
Yeah, that was the other point he brought.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That would be scary on your chart.
I don't, and you're right, I have no idea what Jordan Valley Water is gonna cost. But we talked about that if you do have people starting to come in and bring that Jordan Valley water, it's probably smart to consider creating a separate service area that would pay higher costs associated with that Jordan Valley water. So that it's
It really almost seems like that block 2 is driving that. Like, it's such a substantial increase.
That's right.
How could people absorb? It's like they know that they're making a stand. Here's what all of the people that got in early are gonna pay. But hey, if you're coming in late and you want this, it's just gonna cost so much more.
Well,
You
this
know.
is good because your planning shows that we're planning for that. Now, as they start developing, say, hey, here's what we're up against. But I worry about one thing, and I don't know if anybody in this room knows that, but Kennecott's wells up above us here to the south are all contaminated.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of problems up there. So I don't know if we could poke a well anywhere on Oakers that would be good water. I'm not sure.
I 100% agree.
I don't know where else we could put them. I mean, maybe down at Webster Center or something, it might be better water. I'm not sure. And maybe we need to evaluate that. Can we do some test holes that would give us a little more idea? Because we went out to Great Salt Lake and they were trying to sell us water they didn't own. There wasn't enough shares out there, enough water in the ground they were trying to sell.
Yeah.
That was a ways out there, but I'm just wondering if we have anywhere in our area, like the Harding area or something like that, that we could poke a well down and help us with some more culinary water.
Yeah, we haven't looked at that, but those are all items that could be considered.
I would rather do that than count on Jordan Valley. Jordan Valley can be your backup, but I would still say we should try to develop our own source.
I mean, the challenge there is that does mean that you take on the risk of developing those supplies. But I think those are all legitimate things that could be considered moving forward. The only thing I think that kind of needs to be decided is whether you want to change your policy to require new annexation to bring in water.
I think, sounds like from the boards, you're all in agreement. Whether that's them bringing in the water rights and we build a well, or Jordan Valley.
I just heard last week that developers, the impact fees were just enormous because of sewer and water availability. Because of the development that was putting on the sewer company and water company to provide that resource. And I thought, well, if that's what if you're gonna build, somebody's gotta pay for it.
Right.
I don't know if residents should have to pay for it, existing residents.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think what that does end up meaning is that we will probably end up with 2 impact fee service areas. And one will be those who are already annexed in, and the other will be those who are interested in annexing in. And the one that's already annexed in, that impact fee will actually probably be a little bit higher because it will include a water supply component. The one outside will be a little lower impact fee, but it will have the big caveat that you've got to bring your water with you, and that's going to be a really expensive
Yeah.
number, really high number. So Leon's looking panicked over there about having 2 service areas, but we can figure it out.
Oh, no,
It's gonna work
I'm
out.
not worried about that.
Yeah, all right. Okay, let me just talk about secondary for a second, because we have a very similar secondary situation. With one major caveat. So again, here's our projected demand up top. You'll recognize this is way higher than actual projected demands, but that is because we have been asked to keep a buffer that will allow us not to rely on any of your canal shares. And so if we don't rely on any of the canal shares at all, basically we just keep the canal shares as a backup or a redundancy, then we've got to meet this blue line with our other supplies. So what you can see here is we have our reuse, we have our existing shallow groundwater here, and then what I did was I looked at potential additional water that could be brought in under Jordan Valley's water budget. Is everybody on the board familiar with the Jordan Valley water budget? Basically, they give a certain amount of water for a certain acreage. So that's the purple here, and maybe I should have put the purple under the kind of orange here, but the orange represents the additional water that we would need to make up that gap. So, long story short is what Kennecott currently has planned is too much density for Jordan Valley's water budget. So they're gonna have to, if they're gonna bring their own water, they're gonna have to, Jordan Valley's not going to give them all the water that they need. So they're going to have to find some additional water, which is this 228 acre feet here. So the one other thing to note relative to secondary water is that you actually have a pretty good chunk of water rights associated with shallow groundwater that you could develop. So the question becomes is, on the culinary side, I really believe that the right policy is just to require them to bring their own water. On the secondary side, we may want them to bring some of their own water, but we may also want to offer up some of the district's shallow groundwater as a potential resource to help meet demand. So I don't know, I'll stop there, see if Trevor or Clint have anything to add and questions.
I think it makes sense. I think there's some reliability issues with our existing shallow groundwater wells.
Yeah.
If we were to change our approach and justify maybe a more traditional, bigger vertical turbine
Yeah.
in a well house, you know, that's gonna be more reliable, I think that could potentially justify, it's just if we can get enough water into that, right? That's the big problem is can we collect enough groundwater into one bigger well
Yeah.
to make it pencil out?
Right.
That's the big challenge. So I think there could be, if we could do that, we might as well take advantage as much capacity as we can.
Yeah.
It's just seeing what's available
Is it
for
the
us.
advantage we've got reservoirs now, we can store that water, so we can pump it even through the winter? Or,
Well, we could. I don't know if, we've got competing resources. I know Dallas would like to pump reuse all year. I think the challenge with that is just that you're not drawing down the aquifer with a bigger well.
oh,
Yeah, it's just, how do we get water to? And we've talked, there's potential in Gablers.
There is
They've piped a lot of their,
land drains,
what do you call it, land drain, into a
common,
common basin. where we could potentially put, not even not a deep well, just a vertical turbine in a concrete tank, right? In a sump. So to me, it makes sense to reevaluate our shallow well approach. And as we do that, because we just put a lot of money to keep those existing shallow wells, they're tough. They just are hard, it's a harsh environment.
Oh,
You know, those
because
existing, yeah,
groundwater's
yeah, you know, cause they're submerged, they're submersible pumps. They're only 120.
Yeah, even less than that.
But if we go over towards the Harding area, there's a lot more surface area there. We need to get it next to the golf course, so we get all that surface water.
Yeah.
Under the golf course.
The golf course might be a good spot. The Gabler's Grove, we're thinking, is a good spot.
We just don't wanna draw off the headings on all that crappy water. that's in
Yeah,
there.
we don't wanna get into that, but
Do we monitor, do we know each, well, what the levels are dropping? Do we keep, running tab on where our levels are?
yeah.
Shallow.
So if I'm hearing you, Clint, you're saying, if we do a little investment into the shallow groundwater, we could solve two problems.
Yeah, potentially solve two
One, give
problems.
us more volume, and two, solve some of our maintenance issues.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what your thoughts are, Steve, but
I think it sounds great.
I know that those have been challenging, those shallow
They
wells.
have, but I think if we keep up on them, I think it'd be good.
I mean, we don't have to get rid of them. It's just a potential option.
What would this policy look like then for an annexation area? On the secondary side, would it be either you bring water, or, hey, we have this water that we can essentially develop for X dollars? Like, would you give options? Would you?
I think we're open to that discussion. I think the secondary, if you're talking about the first bump, that's the shallow groundwater, or all of that, the orange and the purple would be shallow groundwater. Is that what, I mean? Potentially.
That's really what my question is,
Yeah.
because theoretically, you could get this purple from Jordan Valley.
Okay.
I will say, there's a little bit of a challenge on then what do we do with that? Is that coming as culinary water, and now we've got to extend culinary water up, or?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where these are all related a little bit.
But on the flip side, we know that there's probably more likelihood that we could get water from Kennecott that would meet secondary
Yeah,
criteria
Yeah.
instead of culinary, right?
yeah, yeah.
And they would probably volunteer that before they would volunteer drinking water.
Higher quality. So maybe we keep that option open and
What's our, have we ever investigated what's our potential for our increasing our groundwater potential? Do we know what that is? How much?
For shallow groundwater?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, we do know that number, and it's enough to do what I can't remember the exact number, but
Yeah.
It would take care of the purple.
it'd take care of the purple and orange, yeah.
so we could potentially, if we were successful in our own groundwater development, we could say, hey, we'll take care of secondary, but you've got to do culinary.
Yeah, that's right,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. And I think that's sort of what I like and what I would recommend, is that we have a slightly different policy just because of the resources that you have.
It makes more sense. line
yeah.
up with our- Trevor, is that?
Yeah, I
What
see
you've
it
been
that
thinking?
way, and I think we're seeing right now the Great Salt Lake stuff and the canal water continuing there, leasing it.
Yeah.
I think that's something
good
that will
revenue.
always be in the works too. So it's not that our developing other water and not using canal is still a good strategy, I believe.
Yeah. And maybe, and that canal leaves us some possibility for swaps or, you know, it's a good resource to
But
have.
Nathan cautioned us that the numbers they're telling us
Yeah,
for canal water, Great Salt
Yeah.
Lake is arbitrarily fictitious.
inflated, but
But because the canal company cannot control the quality of the canal water, I say we give it all to the Great Salt Lake. No, it's terrible, it's cost us a lot of trouble. It's a lot more debris and a lot more stuff in there because the canal company cannot take care of the canal. And they don't have, not that they don't take care of it, they also don't have control over what gets dumped in.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
Well, you know what the biggest irony of all? We might be swapping canal shares to Jordan Valley in the future for drinking water.
really? Okay. I'd give them all they want.
No, I'm joking somewhat, but one of their next sources is treating Utah Lake for drinking water.
Oh, you're kidding.
That's what they told us at our annual meeting.
it's on there.
That's
So-
expensive.
Yeah, just a side note, that's an interesting
I
one.
just know in a RO system, you waste a lot of water to make good water.
Yeah,
Oh, but that was a terrible inefficiency. So,
Yeah.
I solids loading.
I'm just gonna point out one more thing and then we'll move on, because I know we're overtime issue here. I will note that currently there is a gap between what you can produce in reuse and shallow groundwater and what your demands are. So you are gonna have to continue to rely on some amount of canal water until you develop some of this additional shallow groundwater. So that's just something to note.
We don't wanna start that,
we have
do we?
use of it.
We can expand as the plant, but we're limited by how much effluent we get.
Don't we have 7 million gallons a day?
No, it's 3.
Just under 3.
3 million a day is all we have.
It's got capacity to expand. We can
The
expand
system we
it.
have now, but how much do we push into Hershey, or to?
Just under
7?
3 is the flow.
What's the total flow?
2.8 MGD.
That's it?
Mhm.
So are we using everything that we produce at the plant for reuse?
Not yet. The demand's not high enough to take all the flow.
So how much, oh, so. we're
He's
limited
just
on
saying-
Equipment, right?
You're saying in peak
Use.
summer production for,
This volume.
oh, that's a year, that's an annual.
Yeah, this volume, 800 or so, that is all that you can use.
For the,
It's either being, it's never limited by the
The
capacity of your
the
equipment.
reuse. Yeah.
It's limited by either the demand in your system, specifically in the winter, it's zero, right?
Zero, yeah.
Or how much wastewater you have coming in, one or the two. And you can see that's gonna grow over time. And you actually don't need any new equipment to get all this additional water. It's gonna get, basically double. But that's because your population is doubling, you have the flows coming in over time.
So if we have more storage capacity during the winter, we could offset that.
That is true.
But you can see it's a large magnitude. How many acre feet of a reservoir to go from the green to the black? I mean, what are those box jumps? They're 500, so maybe, so yeah, we've got 20 acre foot reservoirs. We'd have to have a 300, 10 times the size.
Hopefully we'd have to have a couple.
Or a couple, yeah.
That's cheaper than resources.
It could be. If
Maybe.
we could get a natural depression like that one land that we've been trying for years to, or the
It's-
Department of Defense.
It's a lot of land, that's
Yeah.
you need dozens of acres of property to try to do that.
South of 41, there you go.
Yeah, that's
8,400 south of 41, there
Yeah.
you go.
We know that that's a
It'll
great
never be
spot.
used. It'll
I
never
know.
be used. We ought to be making strikes to go for that now, because they'll never put houses there. That would be the most ideal place for the most water, and it's protected.
Yeah.
It's very secure. There you go.
Yeah, they told us no, but we can always go back and try them again.
You'll note that I have strategically called that orange additional water needed because all of these are possibilities. Kennecott water, storage of reuse, shallow groundwater. So whatever we can find that's most cost effective to satisfy that.
Well, probably the most feasible is doing something with that groundwater at Gabler's, I would think, in the short term.
Let's see, what was the first one? The first one was draw. What's going on here? Oh, capacity.
Yeah, peak.
This is just from a peak capacity standpoint. What you can see is that you actually run out of treatment capacity a little bit earlier. This is in 2055. If though the other areas are bringing in treated Jordan Valley water, or to Jeff's point, you know, you had additional well production capacity, you would be able to satisfy that. So the peak messages, the peak needs are the same as the annual water volume needs. So we're good there.
The one question, can we double check that the criteria that the Division of Drinking Water uses for our evaluation of capacity, that we're making sure that we're looking at that?
Yeah, meeting those.
Yeah. Systems, what do they call it? Source sizing standards? I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Do you know what they have the plant rated for right now? The EDR plant?
No, not off the top of my head, I'd actually have to.
Is it 12?
Yeah, it is 12.
12 MGD.
12 and a half, somewhere.
Or is it, oh yeah, maybe it's 12 and a half.
I know
it's
I know we've debated this like a bunch of times.
What causes that drop from 8,500 down to 6,900 or 5,900? What causes that big drop from 2020 to 2024? What?
2020 to 2021 there.
Yeah, that big drop.
I believe that's Brian. Or I guess
No, Brian should be outside of this. I think. What
We
did
had- we
decide?
had
Was
big-
it conservation?
So, yeah, that was when we went into our level 3 or 2
Yeah, COVID.
drought condition.
Really?
And then COVID seemed to, we had a lot of low
COVID
years.
COVID pushed it way up. It actually pushed us outside of our source sizing
Yeah,
standard with
yeah,
the
it
state
did.
for 1 year. And then it dropped dramatically because, like Trevor said, because of that drought, we put everybody in drought.
And we
So
haven't,
that means we have to take consideration for our surface water supply.
Not sure.
Say that again.
Yeah, I don't understand.
You're saying that we had a drought.
Oh, that still affected the culinary, because of the outdoor irrigation.
Okay.
Yeah, we still dropped, we didn't have to produce as much during the peak out of the plant. So it had a big impact on.
It's really interesting that there's that big a drop on the peak. When you go back to this, you see that in the annual basis, it wasn't that big of a drop. And so I think it really is people really responding to messaging associated with reducing their irrigation, their watering.
And that was when the state was telling everybody to have brown lawns or yellow lawns and take pictures, you remember, and then report your neighbors. They wanted us to police all of the neighbors who were watering.
Here's secondary water from a capacity standpoint, and you can almost not even tell the difference because they're very similar results. So let's see. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to talk about on water. This is really the last slide, which is the sewer side. So black dots here represent what your historic max monthly flow has been at the treatment plant in MGD. You can see that when we kicked on the
or kicked out the brine, and allowed that to go somewhere else, we've seen a significant drop. And so what this shows, the bottom is your planning infiltration. That's water that just seeps into your system. And note that that's going to go up and down from year to year, depending on your groundwater conditions and snow conditions, etc. That's why the black dots are jumping up and down. It's because that bottom light blue goes up and down from year to year. But we've shown kind of the maximum amount for planning. The green represents your domestic flow coming out of your houses and businesses. And then the blue on the top represents what byproduct was historically estimated to be. And you can see there's pretty good correlation there between the data and the projections. So moving forward, we show that your existing treatment plant will run out of capacity sometime between 2050 and 2055. And you're going to need to expand to something above 5.5 MGD. Is what that's showing.
And that's hydraulically.
Hydraulically correct.
Yeah, so we've got other considerations that will be different than this that we're still working through, that is
Yeah.
aeration.
With our wastewater
Or-
master plan.
Organic treatment capacity is different than this, but
So is this a result of us taking the rainwater out of the sewer line and putting it in its own pipe?
yeah,
And bypassing the plant,
yes,
taking it to C7?
yeah, that was a great for this.
So from a hydraulic
Hydraulic.
standpoint, you've bought probably at least 20 years of capacity by doing that.
But we raise, the flip side is we have an organic load that goes up. Concentration, I mean,
Yeah. And then we'll have to deal with that.
I mean, total load is the same, but the concentration of that goes up, right?
Harder to deal with.
So,
And this is super common right now. Almost everybody we're working with, their flows continue to
go down
fall,
for conservation.
but their loading's going up because
Yeah.
the same amount of poop coming down the line.
I just wondered if there's, you know,
Make showers great again, and we could get our,
I kind of look at it in the brine system where you're dumping it down the drain, but now it's in a separate drain. There's times in the brine system that water is clean water, that it's not contaminated, like it's washed down or whatever. A lot of it's going down there that could be utilized. I'm just not sure when, but there's certain times when we're flushing or whatever we're doing, and it's so diluted that it's probably okay water, and it would benefit us to help that concentration.
is that what, do you think that's, when it would be when it's not or brine true
Yeah, the off-spec water.
off spec?
Yeah.
So it's
Small, that's the
How
smaller
much
flow,
is that?
right?
So each train's about 210 GPM. And then it changes every 15 minutes. We get a big surge, so it's
It
decent.
would be difficult to manage that though,
Yeah.
and redirect.
Well, since we've got automation, I'm just saying, if you were out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Since we've got all the automation there, we might be able to program that where we could selectively put that water in the sewer ditch and help us on the sewer concentration. Wouldn't hurt anything, and wouldn't be contaminated with, filtered water, you know, runoff.
So, I think in theory, but then it creates changing conditions. I mean, it probably would normalize out, but
Sure. It was about almost 1 million gallons a day was the brine in the peak flows. So,
But if we're doing flushing and things like that, we could actually direct that water back in the sewer system, because you have to think of it, when you go down the Rhine line, it's gone. It goes to C7 and we never see it again. So I'm just saying, if we could design and program that we could selectively do that, because that water that you're flushing with is so diluted that, I mean, it could be better utilized to help with your solids in your ditch. Because it's just gonna get worse. I mean,
be more source for reuse too, potentially.
It's just another little
It,
caveat.
it could be
you know.
challenging with the way that it is set up, but we could look at it.
So, the last thing we had here was just the sewer results. We looked at those, and I think my recommendation is you let us make those couple updates, and then our next meeting we'll go over both water and sewer in detail. So with that said, I guess, I think we had some good direction from the board here to move forward. Is there anything else you want to tell us to do differently or relative to growth and water supply?
You guys okay with that?
Okay.
Good.
I think maybe my only remaining question is, when do you want us back to do a similar work session, maybe on modeling results?
Yeah, so
Is that valuable?
if we highlight the major points of, significance along this path, they're probably not gonna wanna be involved in all of those, right? But let's talk through those points that there might be, left, that there might be some, value.
So, in my mind, probably looking at all the recommended improvements is probably,
The projects,
yeah, the actual projects.
that,
That's good.
sound
Pull
good?
together
Rather
an
than looking at all the modeling results and all that, I don't know that, those will drive the projects that we bring. So you're gonna kinda see the results of the modeling with the projects that we're proposing, right?
And then after that, I think is just going to the financial side.
Yeah, then once we get the list of projects, we'll put costs to them, estimates, and then they'll develop impact fee projections, rate projections, and then how do we wanna approach that, the solution to,
We always wanna look at the low hanging fruit, so
Yeah.
we need to make it obvious.
yeah.
Okay, we'll plan on those as
So
touch
maybe
points.
two more,
Yeah,
maybe
I
two
think
more.
so.
and then
That
the-
makes sense to
And then the final rate hearing, so.
Remind me, when are we trying to have rates in place?
Well, I think we still have, next year is still,
The impact fee doesn't have a proposed change for 2026. The rates do, but impact fees don't.
So it'd be good if we could have impact fees by basically October so
Yeah.
that they could be effective.
yeah, and then rates at least by the end of next year,
Okay, all right.
so maybe after the first year.
Yeah.
Depending on, the other thing we've talked a lot about, knowing that some of these projects we'll be short on reserve and capital money. We'll have to talk bond schedule, but probably during the financial
Yeah.
discussion, we'll talk about a bond
Cash flow.
cash flow program that the board feels comfortable with. And, we'll hold off on any of that till that discussion.
Well, I like your idea about looking at expanding the surface water. There's a cost there. You could also go for another grant for that kind of thing, because that would be a big input for second water.
Yeah, that's true.
So we need to have that in mind so we know what that cost is. And I'd like to look at, this is not part of it, but I'd like to look at the corrosion things that are going on in the surface wells. I think there's some things going on there that we might be able to prevent it. There could be frequency, attack, for corrosion attack and things like that. Maybe we need to do filtration. I know we're limited for what kind of space, but I have a feeling it's having something to do with that. Because we see this, the report I'm getting is we're spending a lot of money in repairing those pumps all the time. And I don't think it's necessarily the water. I think it's the combination of the electricity and the water. The frequency is having some effect on that. Because I know I just put a system on my well and I spent extra of that electric interference that can affect the condition of the well and the pump and everything, so I think we need to go look at that again. Trying to save that.
The other thing I will highlight is we also have the wastewater side, the treatment plant, and we'll be bringing probably a separate meeting for that. So, handful of meetings over the next year.
And I will say, we will want to align that with the impact fee stuff, because we want to capture all that with our impact fees.
Okay. So, if you guys feel good about that, I
Yep.
think. Anything else? Okay.
Thanks for everybody's time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no other business, right?
No,
So let's, motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Jeff, you wanna second that?
Yeah.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey, thank you. It's good to see you again.